Well, hello, everyone. How are you all doing today? Didn't Dale do like an awesome job as the facilitator, the head of the room?
You're all very gracious.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I just want to make one comment about my introduction. It's short and sweet, but, I really am your friend. And I have to tell you that I borrowed that from my mentor, John Maxwell, because if any of you have heard him speak, he often will say, "Hello, my name is John, and I am your friend." And that's really what I want to communicate to all of you today. The time that I have with you today, I really just want to really add value to you. I want you, after you leave today, to have felt like that was worth your time, because your time is very valuable. So just know that I am your friend. All right, and before I really get into my story, I would be remiss if I don't point out that my PowerPoint slides, my beautiful PowerPoint slides that you're going to view today during my presentation, are compliments of our very own communication architect, Miss Cynthia Carell. So thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for making me look good. Now, I don't know about my talk, but the slides will make me look good, so thank you. All right, so our ability to communicate plays a very important role in both our personal and our professional lives. When you look around and you see people, observe people that are very successful, growing profitable businesses, they are very efficient and successful in their careers, and it seems like everyone that they meet in both their personal and professional life, they just have a wonderful relationship with them. And I'm here to tell you that I believe sincerely that that has to do with their level of their communication with other people. They really truly value other people, and so they take the time out to really develop those relationships. So I want to first confess, I'm going to share with you my story, my journey in becoming I would say an improved communicator. But I want you all to know that as I stand before you, I'm still a work in progress. There is work that I need to do on developing my communication skills. So I started my career in corporate America. Anybody relate to that? I know most of you are business owners, but I started in corporate America, and I was a telephone claim handling adjuster. That's a long title, isn't it? I actually, what my job was, I helped people get their lives back together after they had been involved in an automobile accident. And as you can imagine, they had property damage to their vehicle, and oftentimes it was no longer drivable. And so that, of course, created a lot of upset. And then on top of it, some of them also had been injured in the accident. So I was, responsible, kind of stressful, but I was pretty darn good at this. I cared about people. I asked a lot of questions, and I on the DISC profile, I'm a CS, so very detailed oriented. So I was pretty darn good, I have to say, at doing my job for the corporation that I work for. So it did seem like, rather appropriate that when my boss announced one day that he was going to be leaving, that they tapped me on the shoulder and they said, "Glenda, you know what? You are like the top performer in our department, and you have a positive attitude, and we just really think that you would be the person to replace your boss. He's going to leave at the end of the month, and you have displayed leadership competencies." Well, I have to tell you, at that time in my career, I hadn't really given that a whole lot of thought. I'm thinking, okay, but I was sort of flattered. I thought, me? Well, sure, I'm good at my job. How hard could it be to be a leader? So, of course, they sweetened the pot. I got to have a big title. I was the managing director of operations. Go figure. Wow, there was money attached to it. And now my name that had been at the bottom of the org chart was going to go up to the top of the org chart. So like I said, oh my goodness, I thought, well, they believe in me, so here I am. So of course, my boss left and I got busy. And now this is the embarrassing part of the story. I have to tell you, that I didn't receive any kind of training or mentoring to be a leader for my organization. And so I had this big fancy title, and I had strong work ethic, and I thought that for the most part that, people just show up and they do the work because you're told to do so. But I soon found out that some members on my team, that was not necessarily the case. But what did I have? I had this big fancy title. And so I started barking orders, and I said, well, I'm sort of responsible for your paycheck, so don't you think you ought to get the work done when I ask you to? And this is the way I would do it, and so I really think that's the right way, so stop what you're doing and do it my way. This is a pretty embarrassing story, is it not? Well, guess what? My results in the department started to tank in a big way. So then I started having much more frequent conversations with my boss. And of course, here's the conversation. Glenda, have you seen your results this week? And I'm like, yeah, like I wasn't aware. I knew there was a problem. And the question was, what's the deal? We put you in a leadership role. You displayed leadership competencies. And I'm thinking to myself, I did? What was that exactly? Because evidently I don't know how to pull them out now. So bottom line is, I went from being a high performer, well thought of in the company, to not so much. And now I knew my job was in jeopardy. And so I said to him, what would you suggest I do? I'm thinking, surely he's the leader. He's a leader in the organization. He would have some ideas for me. He said, I don't have anything for you. It's up to you to figure it out. Yeah. Anybody with me on this story? Anybody? Does any of this sound familiar? Yeah. So I needed my job. I was at a point in my life where I really, and this was killing my ego too. I'd been flattered before, but yeah, I evidently didn't know a darn thing about being a leader. So I want to call it, some people will call it luck, some people would call it divine intervention. That's what I prefer to say. So this thought popped into my head, there must be a book about this leadership thing, how to manage people, how to get results through other people. So I drove myself to the nearest bookstore, and guess what? When I got in the bookstore, there were a lot of books on this topic. When I looked at the bookshelf from floor to ceiling, there were all kinds of books from all kinds of authors and all kinds of titles about leadership and managing people. And so I thought, oh my goodness, where do I begin? Well, again, I like to think that God was on my side, and the first book that I pulled off that shelf is John Maxwell's The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I have no idea, except for God's intervention, that's why I was brought to that book. And thank goodness I was, because I started reading that book, and chapter by chapter, I would go in and apply those principles with my team. And so guess what? It worked. My results started to, move back up the needle. And things, the work environment improved. And did my boss, ask me what I was doing? No, he was just watching the Excel spreadsheet. And I didn't really need to share it with him. But from that day on, I became a solid John Maxwell fan. He would write books, and I would read them, and I would bring those principles into my workplace, and it worked. So I enjoyed a very successful corporate career from that point on as a leader. But about 5 years ago, God came into my life again, and he gave me a nudge, and he said, Glenda, it's time for you to do something else. And I have to say I was a little perplexed by that, because I kind of thought I was on top of my game, and I really didn't know why he might want me to leave it. But and I really didn't know what to do. And so I asked some trusted advisors about that, what should I do? And they said to me, well, Glenda, think about, within your corporate job, what are the things that you like the most? What was the thing that really fueled you? What would you really enjoy? And that was easy. It was the conversations that John had taught me to have with my people, to sit down with them and to find out what is important to them, what goals did they want to achieve during their career, what was important, what really listening to what they had to say and listening to their ideas. And so I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really sure how I could, start my own business and do that type of work. But at the same time, again, I know that my Savior was guiding me through all of this. The John Maxwell Company came out with a certification program where you could become a coach, trainer, or speaker. And so it was really easy how that all fit together. That was the way. So I became, for a monetary investment, I became a certified coach, trainer, and speaker for the John Maxwell Company. And I have licensed and certified to teach his materials and started my own company, and I haven't looked back. And that is a picture that's about 5 years ago, and you can see that I've changed my hair a bit. So I won't ask you to tell me which one you like best. It might put you on the spot a little bit. All right. So moving along, I want to talk about just this whole topic of communication and the importance of it. I've already told you at the beginning how critically important I think it is to our success in life, both personal and professional. So I want to ask you, you've heard my journey about developing myself as a leader and a communicator. So I don't have time for everybody. I would so love to hear everybody's response, but can a couple people just briefly share with me, where do you think you are as far as your development of communication? And where do you think you are? Do you feel comfortable? Do you have a process when you're communicating with people that you sort of follow? Anybody have any thoughts for me? Dale?
Yes, one of the things that I've learned to do in my communication is that people are more likely to embrace a concept and implement it, actually act on it, if they discover it themselves. So one of the things I found is that if I can ask them questions, even if they're leading questions, if I know where I'd like them to, what conclusion I'd like them to reach, that if they do that on their own, and in fact my conclusion is actually right, that they're more likely to act on it, they're more likely to get results because they have validated their discovery with their own experiences, and it makes it easier for them to move forward.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I had two, and Dale covered the first one. Well done. I think before that, it's a pretty simple one. It's 2 ears and 1 mouth. Today, we constantly get bombarded, and we respond, and listening has become something that is pretty competitive, actually. A competitive advantage, that is. So just remember, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Right. Thank you.
I'd like to add to that take responsibility for both sides of a conversation, which is to say, have I made myself clear? Do I understand you correctly? Ask a few questions like that because it ain't all you.
Amen to that. I think we have one more in the back there.
I actually want to build on his point because one thing I've learned in business is that as much as I think I'm a great trainer, I learned from my 6-year-old niece I'm not. I gave her the task on her request of stacking boxes with all the labels facing me. And she did exactly that. The problem was that they were all upside down, sideways, and everything else. So just because I said it and it made sense to me didn't mean it made sense to the person listening. So as he said, make sure that you think of how will they do it, and right off his point of asking questions, because just because I have knowledge in an industry doesn't mean you have knowledge in an industry as well. So
absolutely.
Realize other people aren't experts at what you're an expert at.
Right. Very good. Thank you all for your feedback. That's why we call this session, this workshop environment, Wisdom of the Community. Because while I can stand before you and I can talk about this topic, and that I've studied this topic, we have lots of really smart people in this room. So I really appreciate the feedback. That's the wisdom of our community. So just real quickly, I'm going to share 3 things, 3 communication insights with you today. I'm going to talk to you about the value and the importance of developing your communication skills. I'm going to focus on one particular type of conversation that unfortunately some of us try to avoid from time to time, a crucial conversation, one that sometimes, does always involve some kind of confrontation or some kind of conflict. And the last thing, which is really what my most important idea is for today, is I want to equip all of you with some type of skill, some kind of nugget, something that you can take out with you today to help you have more effective, crucial conversations. So that's what I want to share with you today. Only 3 things. All right. So, also too, I would want to say that for the most part, I have small business owners or what people who call themselves entrepreneurs in the room. And I think that as entrepreneurs, some of it's due to, survival. We are out there networking. We do need to do a lot of networking. We need to be out meeting people so that we can get referrals and leads to grow our business. And I think that, my observation is a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs are really good at the small talk. They're really good about being able to, introduce themselves and be able to start to build a relationship. But I think that I do see them sometimes when they get to that part about growing their business or closing a sale, that can be a little bit, challenging for them. So I kind of want to talk about that today because I kind of see that too as being a crucial conversation, that there's a lot oftentimes, and it's our emotion that's driving it, there's a lot riding on explaining your proposal and hoping to close the sale. All right. All of us, we do communicate on a regular basis. Oh, I was going to do that next, wasn't I, Cynthia? All right, well, hold on. I got a couple more comments before I want to get to that. All right, so all of us, we do communicate on a regular basis. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but we all have a unique communication style. And I'm really not going to go into that today, but if you want to know more about that, I'd be glad to. After today's session, we can talk about we're wired a certain way as to how we approach communication. So also too, John Maxwell says that communication is about connecting. So that's like a deeper level with people. We can talk we all talk, but are we actually making a connection? And the root of that is about listening to others and really taking the focus off of ourselves, which often when we're presenting a proposal, we start out with that idea that this is all about us, and really what we should be most interested in is about, other people. And also too, I'm not trying to indicate that all of you are the thing that I might mention, so please don't take exception. If that's not you, if you're always focused on the other person, right on. All right, so, and then, how do you focus on the other person? It's by listening, and so you have to change your focus from inward to outward. And connection always begins with a commitment to others. So that's going to be the theme of today, is focusing on other people. All right, so now I'm going to move now to just a really brief video it's a little bit of communication humor. So Cynthia, if we could play the video, and we only have our speaker on the laptop, so I don't think you guys will be chattering too much. Hopefully I haven't lost you already, but if we could just take a look at my video.
Hey, how's it going, man? So I'm supposed to tell you that you're not on the planning committee anymore, and it's probably because your ideas suck. Your ideas are not what we would call good, useful, having any value at all. I think they're great, but everybody else thinks they're terrible. You have ideas only a mother could love. Your mother. No, it's not that your ideas are bad. Can I text it? Yeah, I'll text it to you. But just be sure not to read this until after work. Or until you get home, after some good news. I'm sorry no one thinks you're fun. I think it's really admirable that you would continue to say such bad ideas out loud in the face of so much justifiable opposition. It's so inspiring. Good talk. I feel so much better. Is that a new keyboard? No?
Right. Oh, just a little communication humor. But darn, the humanness of me, sometimes wouldn't you just really, just kind of go with it with just for a moment? Wouldn't you just love to be that blunt with people sometimes? Just put it out there. When I saw the video, it really reminds me of the comedy that was popular a few years ago, The Office with Steve Carell. Anybody remember that? When I was in my corporate job, and again, please forgive me, but there were times when I watched those episodes and I'd be like, yes, wouldn't it be just wonderful if you could just hit the person right between the eyes, with, stop that behavior, please, rather than having a crucial conversation that I'm going to teach you guys about in just a few minutes. So today our main topic is kind of focused on those crucial conversations. And some of you, when I say crucial conversations, you might be thinking about, you might envision members of Congress, sitting around a big conference table and, making world decisions. But that's not the conversation that I'm talking about. It's a conversation between, or it could be, but not the one that I'm focused on today. So it's a dialogue between two people, and it has three components, which are on my slide. The stakes are high. You're going into that conversation hopeful that this is going to turn out oftentimes the way we would really like it to turn out. But we also often know that the person probably, they have a vested interest in how this turns out also. So stakes are high. You may or may not know, oftentimes you do know that opinions vary, that you're going in with perhaps an opposite opinion of what the other person might be thinking. And then of course, when you have those two together, stakes are high and opinions vary, then of course, absolutely the emotions run rather high. So you've got yourself sort of worked up over this conversation that you're about to hold. So not your typical conversations. Hopefully we don't, more of our conversations are more typical, but those are the crucial conversation. All right, so we can move on. So we have three ways. And I know that's probably not you guys how you handled the first one especially, but we have three ways we can handle crucial conversations. We can avoid them. We can just think, I hope they stop that behavior because I really don't want to talk to them about it. And so we can avoid it. Been guilty of that. These type of conversations, they're not like fine wine. They don't get better with age. So usually by avoiding them, there is consequences if you don't hit it head on. Then sometimes we have another option. We make up our minds, okay, I can't take this anymore. I'm having this conversation. So we face them, and then oftentimes we handle them poorly because probably we blurt out something we really didn't plan on saying because our emotions are so high. So they don't go so well. We feel good about the fact that we had the conversation, but it might have damaged the relationship. So that's probably not the best way to approach a crucial conversation. Or the third option, which is the one I really want to talk a lot about today, is that we can face them and we can handle them well. There really is a way, a method that you can really sit down with a person and have a productive crucial conversation. So why don't they go well? Well, we already kind of talked about emotions. We've got our emotions are sort of tied to this conversation. We want something to happen. We want a behavior to stop. We really want them to get it so that, our life can be a little bit better. And then I'm not a medical doctor, but there's science behind that our body actually reacts when we're in the middle of, a difficult conversation. The adrenaline starts to pump, and the blood flow to the brain actually shuts down, and it actually sends the blood flow to our limbs, our arms and our legs while we're in this state. So now, because the blood flow's been shut down in our brain, we really can't think. Because sometimes these conversations, what I'm going to talk about how to plan for one, but has anybody ever been in a conversation that you thought was a typical one and all of a sudden there was an issue that you were not aware of? So, all of a sudden it turned into a crucial conversation when you were not prepared. So the body, it actually relaxes, so you're caught off guard, you're blindsided, and your body kind of, it sort of turns on you. You can't think what would be the right thing to say, and the science behind it is because of the body pumping to our arms and our limbs, it's getting us prepared to, face a saber-toothed tiger versus your boss or your wife or your husband. So our body doesn't really serve us well. We're under a lot of pressure and stress because, it might be a sale that we want to close. It might be we worked really hard on our proposal and things are just not going like we'd like. And so we act in self-defeating ways. We're caught off guard. We're stumped. We don't know how to start, how to respond to what the person's saying to us. So we just wing it. So now that I've sort of described a crucial conversation, I'm thinking that probably all of you, some type of scenario situation has popped into your head. So I thought it'd be kind of fun if we would name some of these type of situations that we get ourselves into, the type of conversation. So Amber is going to come up, and we're going to capture these on the flip chart. So if you guys could just shout out to me, think to yourself and maybe you have, if you're like me, I have a lot of experience. I kind of know, I have some on my mind. Tell me, what do you think constitutes a crucial conversation? What issues? Can you let us know? Just kind of shout them out and we'll throw them up on the flip chart.
Creative direction.
I like that. Creative direction. Money. Core values conflict. Negotiation. You're fired. I want to quit. Attitude. Inappropriate behavior. No, I had one of those conversations. Yes, that is a crucial conversation. That's a winner. That's a pretty good list. Anything else? Sports affiliation. All right, that's a great list. Thank you, Amber. Awesome. Where'd you go to high school? Yeah. I've noticed a lot of people in St. Louis are prepared for that one, Andy. They are. All right. So there you go. Good job. Thank you for your participation. All right. Let's move on. What are the benefits? And I'm talking your all's language because those of us that are especially coached by Bill Purnett, he always tells us in our businesses, what are the benefits, Glenda, of me paying attention to your talk? What are the benefits? Well, if we're prepared for the talk, we can probably, the first three kind of roll together, we can probably anticipate and also prepare to overcome objections to our proposal or what we have, our product or service we have to offer. We can, of course, engage in better negotiations, and we can probably, here's the big one, we can close more sales, and we're able to grow our business, which is really what we're all about. It can improve our relationships, both personal and professional. And it can also, as I described, it can also improve our personal health. We don't go through those episodes where our body's overheating and reacting. And there's actual medical science behind the idea that when we are pushed into having crucial conversations on a frequent basis and we're not handling them well, it actually lowers our immune system. And so then we are more susceptible to illnesses. So all great reasons for us to try to work on our ability to improve our crucial conversations. So I think it's evident that, learning to handle crucial conversations is worthwhile. And I want to tell you that it's an attainable goal. I'm going to give you a tool, but believe me, you too can learn it. If I can learn it, you can learn it. Trust me. All right. So next slide, Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia, for being my guide today. All right, work on me first. And can I just go into my humanness for just a moment here? I love personal growth and self-development books. I have a whole library of them, and I love them, and I know why I read them. But it occurred to me not that long ago, when it starts out chapter 1. Chapter 1. Couldn't it just one time, rather than say start with you or work on me first, because that's how they all begin, chapter 1, work on me. Couldn't it just one time say, they're the problem, let them figure it out. When they get it figured out, then it's your turn. It would just be so refreshing. Just that chapter 1 is always, I know, work on me. And trust me, I do understand why I have to work on me first, because I'm the only person, really, quite frankly, that I have any control over whatsoever. So I do get it. I digress. I'm just saying, just sometimes it's like, wouldn't it be so cool if I just opened it up and said, Glenda, it said right there in black and white, Glenda, they're the problem, it's not you. You can wait. Okay, next slide. All right. So oftentimes when we know that we need to have a crucial conversation, we can kind of feel stuck. We know we've got something that's bothering us. We've observed something that we know we need to address, but we're just feeling like in a place where we're just not really sure. So it can be valuable to try to figure out what's the problem I need to address by asking ourselves a couple questions here. First of all, is it a single issue? Is it one time occurrence, something that somebody said or that you observed that is so egregious you just have to address it? Or is it a reoccurring problem? Is it that problem that they just keep doing it, they just won't stop it, and you just keep waiting, you're just hoping that they're going to stop it so you don't have to have the conversation? So is it a reoccurring problem? And then is it affecting a relationship, a personal or professional relationship that you might have? And also think about, do I, in this conversation, do I need to be, effective in it? Because do I spend a lot of time with this person, or am I never going to see them again? So things to consider to get yourself unstuck. All right. And then we need to kind of like work on me first. Well, where I got to start is with my heart. And so we have to, and a very wise person who happens to be in this room told me, which is really good, that when you're starting to think about what you want for yourself, think about that the universal law out there about other people is that you have to have an appreciation that everyone out there is doing the best they can. You have to just have an appreciation. We know what we want, but also other people have goals and things that they're trying to accomplish in life. And so if we go into this while we're preparing to have a conversation, not only thinking about what we want, but also the focus on having respect for other people. So what do I want? It could be, all of us go into, especially, a sale type conversation, presenting your proposal. We have an idea about what we want to happen in this conversation. We just, we are convinced that, all clients need the top of the line product or service that we're offering the most expensive, but it could be that you could think about that, what would be a win in this conversation? Maybe I don't get everything that I want, but what would be, if we have a mutual purpose and a common goal, then what would really be a win? And sometimes you have to step back. You could go in thinking, this is what I want, but what could I be okay with? What could I settle for that would make this a good, help me to continue to build a relationship with the person? And then again, what about the other person? What do I really want for the other person? Do I want to, continue to develop a positive relationship with this person? They have needs. Is my top of the line product or service the best, really the best for this particular client's need? Or would it be more appropriate that I offer them something that falls a little bit lower on my value ladder? And then, am I behaving in ways that are going to move me forward for what I want? So really doing I call it a gut check, trying to figure out, what is the best outcome for this particular conversation, for me and for others? And then we need to master our stories. Did you all know that we tell ourselves stories? We do. When you really think about it, and those stories that we tell ourselves, they create feelings. After we observe what someone has done or not done, we start to have a feeling, and then that creates the emotion. For example, think about when you have a client, you've met with them, and they seem really excited about your product or service, and they tell you to send them a proposal. So you put a lot of time and effort into preparing that proposal, and you shoot it off to them, maybe you meet with them in the morning and you shoot it off to them in the afternoon, because they're so excited, and so are you. You're so convinced it's going to be the best thing possible for them. So you send it in the afternoon, and they don't respond, and you think to yourself, well, maybe they didn't, check their email at the end of the day. So then the next day comes, and they don't respond. And you keep checking, you're checking your email, and you're thinking, did I send that? Did I hit send? Because they were so excited. And so you know what? They don't respond. They don't respond the next day. And you're thinking, what is the deal? I thought, I explained it well. I told them I followed through. I sent the proposal, and they're not responding. You know what? They probably were not interested. I start to think to myself, I start to tell myself this story. They really weren't interested. They put me through those hoops just to get rid of me. They weren't interested at all. And you know what? I really don't even like them very well. I didn't even really want to work with them. So, so what? So what? I'll just go on to the next person. Well, then the next day, here it comes. They call you on the phone, and they're like, hey, I got your proposal today. I had to go out of town for a couple days unexpectedly. I am so excited about your proposal. When can we get together? So there you go. Do you see how our story just did not serve us well? And so we have to be careful about the stories. And it goes back to what Stephen Hager told me about that universal law, that people they have needs too, and there's things going on in their life. It's not just about us, that everybody's doing the best that they can. All right. So we can move on. All right, so now here's where the rubber meets the road. This is where I'm going to actually show you a process, or the step-by-step process of how you can hold an effective, crucial conversation. So there are 5 steps. The first 3 actually are the what, and then the last 2 are the how. So what we want to do when we sit down with someone to have this crucial conversation, what we start out with is the facts. And the reason that we start out with the facts is because facts are less controversial. If our first statements are about what the actual facts are, for instance, I had an employee that was showing up late for work in my corporate life, and I said to her, I've noticed that you were late on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. And so she couldn't dispute the fact. Yeah, however, I could have said, you know what, I have noticed that you're late all week. So you see the difference? I'm actually being specific. What are the facts? And she didn't push back because I didn't, judge her that she'd been, all of a sudden her character had changed. So it was really important that I just start with the facts. And so you're actually making sure that when you begin the conversation, because you're trying to make it a safe place. You don't want to start out with some kind of a confrontation in the conversation. So next is, now it's okay, you can tell your story. You state the facts, and then you can tell them what you think, what you're thinking, what you're observing, and you're just you're sort of inquiring, you're talking tentatively. You're not talking in absolutes. You don't say always or never in your statements. You don't want to talk in absolutes. You actually, share your story. And that's the part that gets tricky. I'm going to be honest with you, because now you're probably saying something that's a little negative or making a judgment. And so the hair on the back of their head might start to stand up a little bit because you're sitting down to have this conversation. So you just have to make sure that don't talk in absolutes. and tell your story. And there's no point in really bringing up the facts if you don't tell your story, because oftentimes the facts are usually not the problem. It's the story. It's what you've observed that you feel like you need to address. So talk tentatively, and then encourage testing. Again, try to avoid stating something that is an absolute. All right, so those are the 5 skills for conducting an effective, crucial conversation. So now I'm going to give all of you the opportunity to try this on. So on your tables, I have some folders, so get the red folder. Not the blue folder, Bill. So everybody should take a sheet, and on that sheet is a crucial conversation that needs to be held. Anybody need I don't know if they'll need a pen on this one. It's okay, no problem. So everybody got a handout? Okay, this is a safe place for us to try this out. So it's a scenario, so everybody should read the scenario, and you have 2 options at your table how you want to try this out. What you can do is you can pair up, you can get yourself a partner, and one of you can be Harry, and one of you will be the you. Profound there, right? Somebody's the you, and somebody's the Harry. And I want you to read the scenario, and then if you are you, the you, then you would tell the facts. You would share the facts, and then tell your story. And then, of course, make sure that you make it safe by talking tentatively or in encouraging testing. And then, of course, after you're done, then you want to ask the other person allow them to share the facts and or tell their story and then share the facts. So you talk first. I'm sorry about that. I'm confusing you all. So read the story, pair up. One person's Harry, one person's you, and then follow the method, the STATE acronym to try it out. Or if there's a couple leaders at the table and 2 people want to raise their hand and say, I got this, I'll be Harry and you be you, and the rest of you just want to observe, that's okay too. It's power. You know what they say, knowledge is power. And I can see how, and I know even in my own workings that when I think this through a little bit, I give it a little bit of thought when I'm preparing for this conversation. If I remember, okay, Glenda, when you first start with the facts. Start with that. Don't start with, the judgment or, the negative, stop it. Don't do that anymore, and the, judging, because unfortunately you want it to be fortunately you want it to be a safe conversation because you want something productive to come out of this conversation. You want to be able to move on with this person in your professional or your personal life. So that's why I love this so much. So, I hope you enjoyed that. All right, so next up, if you'll get out the blue folder. I'm sorry. Nope, you're good. So everybody get a handout at your table. And this one is my gift to you. This is what I want you to take with you today. I've taught you kind of how the core of the conversation, but my guess is that all of you probably have a conversation that you need to hold or that you're not holding well. So on an individual basis, I want you to think about what's your conversation that you've been putting off. And I also know that it's kind of hard to just get started. When you sit down with the person, it's sort of difficult to know what to say. So my handout kind of gives you some suggestions of what you might say to begin the conversation, and then you follow it up with the STATE process, the STATE acronym that you just tried out in the role play. So what I'd like for you to do is take a couple minutes, look over the openings. If you like those, circle the one you think you'd like to use because I'm helping you prepare for your crucial conversation. So circle the one that speaks to you, Or I gave you a space below. If you don't like mine, no problem. I don't feel any offense. Write your own, what you think, how you begin to open the conversation, or combine the two if you like sort of what my possible opening is above and you want to add to it. So I'm going to give you just a minute to think through, identify your conversation, and figure out what would you say when you begin that conversation. And then this last part is, and this is about accountability, and we're kind of big on that here at E for E, because, you know, we just don't want this to be theory. Accountability. I would like for you to actually set the date when you're going to actually hold the conversation. And then I will say something about the actual date. It's important to write it down. However, somebody gave me some really wise tips about this, is that, you know, it's back to having respect for the other person. When you sit down to have it, or you decided today I'm having it, I'm prepared. Glenda helped me prepare for this conversation today. Check the other person. Do they seem to be kind of distracted? Do they seem to be talking about something else that's really very important and on their mind? They seem upset or frustrated about something. So that would be your cue that it's probably not the day. Even though you've prepared, you're ready to have the conversation, it's going to go a whole lot better if you sort of put that off. So I would encourage you, prepare for the conversation, definitely hold it, and you should be fine. But I just want you to be aware that sometimes people are just not ready to really give us their full attention. So I will just give you that tip about setting your date. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes here to write out your opening and write your date as to when you're going to hold the conversation. Okay, you know me, I'm going to ask you at a future meeting. I'm going to be asking some of you guys if you had your crucial conversation. All right. Okay, so just to wrap up, I want to, hopefully all of you, after my talk today, you have a better understanding about what a crucial conversation is, and I hope that I did a good job in equipping you with a tool to be able to approach that crucial conversation. And I've impressed upon you the importance of developing our communication skills, how impactful that can be to both our personal and our professional life. So one last thing before I let you go. Any questions, thoughts, any feedback for me? We're kind of running short on time, but does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, Anne. Absolutely, Anne. Absolutely, it would. Yeah, that's a really great analogy. You're right. Absolutely. Starting with the facts and telling your story. Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. Excellent. Anybody else have any comments, questions for me? All right, well, I'll take it that I did a good job then, since I don't have a lot of questions.